Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. Chapter 17. The Arch Absurd. According to the assertion of Beelzebub, our sun neither lights nor heats. In order, my dear Hussein, that you should meanwhile have an approximate representation also of just how far that function, called the instinctive sensing of reality, which is proper to every three-brained being of the whole of our great universe, is already entirely lacking in the presences of the three-centred beings breeding on the planet Earth, and especially in those of the most recent periods. It will be enough to begin with, I think, if I explain to you only about how they understand and explain to themselves the causes why there periodically proceed on their planet those cosmic phenomena which they call daylight, darkness, heat, cold, and so on. All without exception of the three-brained beings of that planet who have attained the age of a responsible being, and even those many and various wiseacrings existing there which they call sciences, are categorically certain that all the said phenomena arrive on their planet completely, so to say, ready-made directly from their own sun. And as Mullah Nasser Eddin would say in such cases, no more hokey-pokey about it. What is most peculiar in this case is that, except for the certain beings who existed before the second Transapounian perturbation there, absolutely no doubt whatever concerning this certainty of theirs has ever as yet crept into a single one of them. Not only has not a single one of them, having a reason which, though strange, has nevertheless some resemblance to sane logic, ever yet doubted the causes of the said phenomena, but not a single one of them has manifested concerning these cosmic phenomena even that strange special property of their common psyche, which has also become proper to the three-brained beings of that planet alone, and which is called to fantasy. Having said these last words, Beelzebub, after a little while, with a bitter smile, continued to talk as follows. You, for instance, have the normal presence of a three-brained being, and within your presence there is, intentionally implanted from without, osciano, or, as they say there on the earth, education, which is founded on a morality based solely on the commandments and indications of his uni-being himself, and the most holy individuals near to him. And yet, if you should chance to be there among them, you would be unable to prevent the process in yourself of the process of the being Nehitragul, that is, the process which again there on the earth is called irrepressible inner laughter. That is to say, you would not be able to restrain yourself from such laughter, if in some way or another they were suddenly clearly to sense and understand, without any doubt whatever, that not only does nothing like light, darkness, heat, and so on come to their planet from the sun itself, but that their supposed source of heat and light is itself almost always freezing cold, like the hairless dog of our highly esteemed Mullah Nasser Eddin. In reality, the surface of their source of heat, like that of all the ordinary suns of our great universe, is perhaps more covered with ice than the surface of what they call their North Pole. Surely this hearth of heat itself would rather borrow heat, if only a little, from some other source of cosmic substance, than send a part of its own heat to any other planet, especially to that planet which, though it belongs to its system, yet in consequence of the splitting off from it of a whole side, became a lopsided monstrosity, and is now already a source of offensive shame for that poor system Ours. But do you yourself know, my boy, in general, how and why, in the atmosphere of certain planets during trogo-auto-egocratic processes, there proceed these Kstadzavacht, Kladzakt, Tainalair, Paishakir, and other such phenomena, which your favourites call daylight, darkness, cold, heat, and so on? Beelzebub asked Hussein. If you don't clearly understand, I shall explain this to you a little. Although I've promised to explain to you only later all the fundamental laws of world creation and world maintenance in detail, yet the necessity has here arisen to touch upon, if only briefly, the questions concerning these cosmic laws, without waiting for that special talk I promised. And this is necessary in order that you may be able better to take in all that we are now talking about, and also in order that what I've already told you may be transubstantiated in you in the right way. It's necessary to say, first of all, that everything in the universe, both the intentionally created and the later automatically arisen, exists and is maintained exclusively on the basis of what is called the common cosmic Togo-auto-egocratic process. This most great common cosmic Togo-auto-egocratic process was actualized by our endless uni-being when our most great and most holy Son Absolute had already existed, on which our all-gracious endless Creator had and still has the chief place of his existence. This system, which maintains everything arisen and existing, was actualized by our endless Creator in order that what is called the exchange of substances, or the reciprocal feeding of everything that exists, might proceed in the universe, and thereby that the merciless Hieropass might not have its maleficent effect on the Son Absolute. This same most great common cosmic Togo-auto-egocratic process is actualized always and in everything on the basis of the two fundamental cosmic laws, the first of which is called the fundamental first-degree sacred heptaparaparshinok, and the second the fundamental first-degree sacred triamasikamno. Owing to these two fundamental sacred cosmic laws, there first arise from the substance called etherokrino, under certain conditions, what are called crystallizations, and from these crystallizations, but later, and also under certain conditions, there are formed various large and small, more or less independent cosmic definite formations. It's just within and upon these cosmic definite formations that the processes of what are called the involution and evolution of the already formed concentrations and also of the said crystallizations take place, of course, also according to the two said fundamental sacred laws. And all the results obtained from these processes in atmospheres, and further by means of these atmospheres themselves, blend and go for the actualizing of the said exchange of matters for the purposes of the most great common cosmic Togo-auto-egocrat. Etherokrino is that prime source substance with which the whole universe is filled, and which is the basis for the arising and maintenance of everything existing. Not only is this etherokrino the basis for the arising of all cosmic concentrations without exception, both large and small, but also all the cosmic phenomena, in general, proceed during some transformation in the same fundamental cosmic substance, as well as during the processes of the involution and evolution of various crystallizations, or, as your favourites say, of those active elements which have obtained and still continue to obtain their prime arising from this same fundamental prime source cosmic substance. Bear in mind here that it's just because of this that the mentioned objective science says that everything without exception in the universe is material. You must also know further that only one cosmic crystallization existing under the name omnipresent Okidanok obtains its prime arising, although it's also crystallized from etherokrino, from the three holy sources of the sacred Theomermelogos, that is, from the emanation of the most holy Son Absolute. Everywhere in the universe, this omnipresent Okidanok, or omnipresent active element, takes part in the formation of all both great and small arisings, and is in general the fundamental cause of most of the cosmic phenomena, and in particular of the phenomena proceeding in the atmospheres. in order that you may be able to understand at least approximately concerning this omnipresent Okidanok. Also, I must tell you, first of all, that the second fundamental cosmic law, the sacred Triamazikamno, consists of 3 independent forces. That is to say, this sacred law manifests in everything, without exception, and everywhere in the universe, in 3 separate independent aspects. And these 3 aspects exist in the universe under the following denominations. The first under the denomination the Holy Affirming, the second the Holy Denying, and the third the Holy Reconciling. And this is also why, concerning this sacred law and its 3 independent forces, the said objective science has among its formulations, specially concerning this sacred law, the following: a law which always flows into a consequence and becomes the cause of subsequent consequences, and always functions by 3 independent and quite opposite characteristic manifestations latent within it, in properties neither seen nor sensed. Our sacred Theomalogos, also, that is, the prime emanation of our most holy Son Absolute, acquires just the same lawfulness at its prime arising, and during its further actualizations gives results in accordance with it. And so, my boy, the omnipresent Okidanok obtains its prime arising in space outside of the most holy Son Absolute itself from the blending of these 3 independent forces into one, and during its further involutions it is correspondingly changed in respect of what is called the vivifyingness of vibrations, according to its passage through what are called the stopinders or gravity centres of the fundamental common cosmic sacred Heptaparaparshinok. I repeat, among the number of other already definite cosmic crystallizations, the omnipresent Okidanok unfailingly always participates in both large and small cosmic formations, wherever and under whatever external surrounding conditions they may arise in the universe. This common cosmic unique crystallization, or active element, has several peculiarities proper to this element alone, and it's chiefly owing to these peculiarities proper to it that the majority of cosmic phenomena proceed, including among other things the said phenomena that take place in the atmosphere of certain planets. Of these peculiarities proper to the omnipresent active element alone, there are several. But it's enough for the theme of our talk if we become acquainted just with 2 of them. The first peculiarity is that when a new cosmic unit is being concentrated, then the omnipresent active element does not blend as a whole with such a new arising, nor is it transformed as a whole in any definite corresponding place, as happens with every other cosmic crystallization in all the said cosmic formations. But immediately on entering as a whole into any cosmic unit, there immediately occurs in it what is called Jarklom. That is to say, it is dispersed into the 3 fundamental sources from which it obtained its prime arising, and only then do these sources each separately give the beginning for an independent concentration of 3 separate corresponding formations within the given cosmic unit. And in this way, the omnipresent active element actualizes at the outset in every such new arising the sources for the possible manifestation of its own sacred law of Triamazikamno. It must without fail be noticed also that in every cosmic formation, the said separated sources, both for the perception and for the further utilization of this property of the omnipresent active element, for the purpose of the corresponding actualizing, exist and continue to have the possibility of functioning as long as a given cosmic unit exists. And only after the said cosmic unit has been completely destroyed, do these holy sources of the sacred Triamazikamno, localized in the omnipresent active element Okidanok, reblend, and they are again transformed into Okidanok, but having now another quality of vivifyingness of vibrations. As regards the second peculiarity of the omnipresent Okidanok, equally proper to it alone, and which is also necessary for us to elucidate just now, for the given theme of our talk, you'll be able to understand about that only if you know something concerning one fundamental cosmic second-degree law existing in the universe, under the denomination of the sacred Aiaiaua. And this cosmic law is that there proceeds within every arising, large and small, when in direct touch with the emanations either of the Sun Absolute itself or of any other sun, what is called remorse. That is a process when every part that has arisen from the results of any one holy source of the sacred Triamazikamno, as it were, revolts and criticizes the former unbecoming perceptions and the manifestations at the moment of another part of its whole, a part obtained from the results of another holy source of the same fundamental sacred cosmic law of Triamazikamno. And this sacred process, Aiaiaua, or remorse, always proceeds with the omnipresent active element Okidanok also. The peculiarity of this latter during this sacred process is that while the direct action either of the sacred Theomurtmalogos or the emanation of any ordinary sun is round about the whole of its presence, this active element is dispersed into its three prime parts, which then exist almost independently. And when the said direct action ceases, these parts blend again and then continue to exist as a whole. Here you might as well, I think, be told, by the way, about an interesting fact I noticed, which occurred in the history of their existence, concerning the strangeness of the psyche of the ordinary three-brained beings of that planet, which has taken your fancy in respect of what they call their scientific speculations. And that is that, during the period of my many-centuried observation and study of their psyche, I had occasion to constate several times that, though science appeared among them almost from the very beginning of their arising, and it may be said periodically, like everything else there, rose to a more or less high degree of perfection, and that though during these and other periods many millions of three-brained beings that called their scientists must have arisen and been again destroyed, yet with the single exception of a certain Chinese man named Chun Kil Tez, about whom I shall tell you later in detail, not once has the thought entered the head of a single one of them there that between these two cosmic phenomena, which they call emanation and radiation, there is any difference whatsoever. Not a single one of those sorry scientists has ever thought that the difference between these two cosmic processes is just about the same as that which the highly esteemed Mullah Nasser Eddin once expressed in the following words: "They are as much alike as the beard of the famous English Shakespeare and the no less famous French Armagnac." For the further clarification of the phenomena taking place in the atmospheres and concerning the omnipresent active element in general, you must know and remember this also, that during the periods when, owing to the sacred process Aiaiaua, Jarklon proceeds in the Okidanok, then there is temporarily released from it the proportion of the pure, that is, absolutely unblended, etherochrono, which unfailingly enters into all cosmic formations, and there serves, as it were, for connecting all the active elements of these formations, and afterwards, when its three fundamental parts reblend, then the said proportion of etherochrono is re-established. Now it's necessary to touch also, of course, again, only briefly on another question, namely what relation the omnipresent active element Okidanok has to the common presence of beings of every kind, and what are the cosmic results actualized owing to it. It's chiefly necessary to touch upon this question because you'll then have still another very striking and illuminating fact for the better understanding of the difference between the various brain systems of beings, namely the systems called one-brained, two-brained and three-brained. Know first that, in general, every such cosmic formation called brain receives its formation from those crystallizations, the affirming source for whose arising, according to the sacred Triamasikamno, is one or another of the corresponding holy forces of the fundamental sacred Triamasikamno, localized in the omnipresent Okidanok. And the further actualizings of the same holy forces proceed by means of the presences of the beings just through those localizations. I shall sometime in the future specially explain to you about the process itself of the arising of these corresponding being brains in the presences of beings, but meanwhile let us talk, though not in detail, about the results the omnipresent Okidanok actualizes by means of these being brains. The omnipresent active element Okidanok enters into the presences of beings through all the three kinds of being food. And this proceeds because, as I've already told you, this same Okidanok obligatorily participates in the formation of all kinds of products, which serve as all three being foods, and is always contained in the presence of these products. And so, my boy, the chief peculiarity of this omnipresent Okidanok in the given case is that the process of Jarklum proceeds in it within the presence of every being also, but not from being in contact with the emanations of any large cosmic concentration. But the factors for this process in the presences of beings are either the results of the conscious process of part dog duty on the part of the being themselves, about which processes I shall also explain to you in detail later, or of that process of Great Nature herself, which exists in the universe under the name Kirku-Nonanian actualization, which process means the obtaining of the required totality of vibrations by adaptation. This latter process proceeds in beings absolutely without the participation of their consciousness. In both cases, when Okidanok enters into the presence of a being and the process of Jarklum proceeds in it, then each of its fundamental parts blends with those perceptions which correspond with it according to what is called kindred vibrations, and which are present in the being at the moment, and further, these parts are concentrated upon the corresponding localization, that is, upon the corresponding brain. And these blendings are called being impulsacri. It's necessary to notice further that these localizations or brains in beings serve not only as apparatuses for the transformation of corresponding cosmic substances for the purposes of the most great common cosmic trogo-auto-egocrat, but also as the means for beings whereby their conscious self-perfecting is possible. This latter aim depends upon the quality of the presence of the being impulsacri, concentrated or, as is otherwise said, deposited upon the said corresponding being brains. Concerning the qualities of being impulsacri, there is among the direct commandments of our all-embracing endlessness even a special commandment which is very strictly carried out by all three-brained beings of our great universe, and which is expressed in the following words: always guard against such perceptions as may soil the purity of your brains. Three-brained beings have the possibility, personally, to perfect themselves, because in them there are localized three centers of their common presence, or three brains, upon which afterwards, when the process of Jarklom proceeds in the omnipresent Okidanok, the three holy forces of the sacred Triamazikamno are deposited and acquire the possibility for their further, this time independent actualizings. Just in this is the point, that the beings having this three-brained system can, by the conscious and intentional fulfilling of being Parkdog Chuji, utilize from this process of Jarklom in the omnipresent Okidanok its three holy forces for their own presences, and bring their presences to what is called the Sekro-Nul-Lanzaknian state. That is to say, they can become such individuals as have their own sacred law of Triamazikamno, and thereby the possibility of consciously taking in and coating in their common presence all that holy which incidentally also aids the actualizing of the functioning in these cosmic units of objective or divine reason. But the great terror of it, my boy, lies just in this, that although in those three-brained beings who have interested you and who breed on the planet Earth, there arise and are present in them, up to the time of their complete destruction, these three independent localizations or three being brains, through which separately all the three holy forces of the sacred Triamazikamno, which they might also utilize for their own self-perfecting, are transformed and go for further corresponding actualizations, yet chiefly on account of the irregular conditions of ordinary being existence established by them themselves, these possibilities beat their wings in vain. It's interesting to note that the said being brains are found in the same parts of the planetary body of these three-brained beings who arise on the planet Earth as in us, namely, the brain predetermined by great nature for the concentration and further actualizing of the first holy force of the sacred Triamazikamno, called the Holy Affirming, is localized and found in the head. The second brain, which transforms and crystallizes the second holy force of the sacred Triamazikamno, namely the Holy Denying, is placed in their common presences, also as in us, along the whole of their back in what is called the spinal column. But as regards the place of concentration and source of the further manifestation of the third holy force of the sacred Triamazikamno, namely the Holy Reconciling, the exterior form of this being brain in the three-centred beings there bears no resemblance whatever to ours. It must be remarked that in the primordial three-brained beings there, this said being brain was localized in the same part of their planetary body as in us, and had an exterior form exactly similar to our own, but for many reasons which you will be able to understand for yourself during the course of my further talks, great nature was compelled, little by little, to regenerate this brain, and to give it the form which it now has in the contemporary beings. This being brain in the contemporary three-brained beings there is not localized in one common mass, as is proper to the presences of all the other three-brained beings of our great universe, but is localized in parts according to what is called specific functioning, and each such part is localized in a different place of their whole planetary body. But although in its exterior form this being centre of theirs has now variously placed concentrations, nevertheless all its separate functionings are correspondingly connected with each other, so that the sum total of these scattered parts can function exactly as in general it's proper for it to function. They themselves call these separate localizations in their common presence nerve nodes. It's interesting to notice that most of the separate parts of this being brain are localized in them, just in that place of their planetary body where such a normal being brain should be, namely in the region of their breast, and the totality of these nerve nodes in their breast they call their solar plexus. And so, my boy, the process of Jarklom in the omnipresent Okidanok proceeds in the presence of each of these favourites of yours, and in them also its three holy forces are blended independently with other cosmic crystallizations and go for the corresponding actualizations, but as chiefly owing to the already mentioned abnormal conditions of being existence gradually established by them themselves, they have entirely ceased to fulfill being part dog duty. Then, in consequence of this, none of these holy sources of everything existing, with the exception of the denying source alone, is transubstantiated for their own presences. The crystallizations arising in their presences from the first and from the third holy forces go almost entirely for the service only of the common cosmic togo-auto-egocratic process, while for the coating of their own presences there are only the crystallizations of that second part of the omnipresent Okidanok, namely of the holy denying, and hence it is that the majority of them remain with presences consisting of the planetary body alone, and thus are for themselves destroyed forever. As regards all the peculiarities proper to the omnipresent, everywhere penetrating, active element Okidanok alone, and also as regards the further results which these peculiarities actualize, you will have a complete representation of them only after I shall have explained to you, in more or less detail, as I've already promised, about the fundamental laws of world creation and world maintenance. But meanwhile, I shall tell you about those elucidating experiments concerning the omnipresent cosmic crystallization, at which I was personally present. But I must first tell you that I was an eyewitness of these said elucidating experiments, not on that planet Earth which has taken your fancy, nor did your favourites make them, but on the planet Saturn, where they were made by that three-brained being who, during almost the whole period of my exile in that solar system, was my real friend, about whom I recently promised to tell you a little more in detail.